Hi, RichieRich TV here. Today I will show you a comedy and family movie called RichieRich. Spoilers ahead. Watch out and take care. One morning, Richard Rich Sr. proudly announces the birth of his son, Richie. Amongst the household staff is Herbert Arthur Runcible Cadbury, who becomes Richie's butler and guardian, guiding him throughout his childhood. Despite spending most of his time working, Richard finds ways to be with his son, like having him pampered in his office. As Richie grows, he becomes interested in baseball and gets trained by professionals. Outside the fun and games, Richie also partakes in his father's philanthropic projects. One day, people gather in celebration of the United Tool's reopening. A reporter notes how the factory got bankrupt, threatening 600 workers' jobs until Richard helped save the company. Soon, a helicopter arrives, catching the attention of a group of kids at a nearby lot. The people cheer, and Richie steps out to receive the factory's token of gratitude in his father's stead. As he's being introduced, Richie notices the kids playing baseball, so he quickly receives the gift, gives a small speech, and squeezes through the crowd to meet the kids. However, his head of security, Ferguson, grabs him to stop him. This irritates Cadbury, so he delicately reminds Richie that they have different obligations to tend to. After the kid leaves, he compromises Ferguson at no point ever to get Richie like that in the future. As the helicopter ascends, Richie could only gaze at the kids, realizing that there is something his wealth couldn't buy. At the estate, Richie enters the mansion and gets greeted by his dog, Dollar. Upstairs, Regina shows her latest project to Richard, a family portrait sculpted into a mountain, which she calls Mount Richmore. When Richard asks how she got it done in a week, she explains that Professor Keenbean invented a proton particle maximizer to speed up the process. Richie arrives and excitedly tells his father about the kids playing baseball, but Richard leaves to answer a call from the president. In the laboratory, Keenbean records a video showcasing his subatomic molecular reorganizer, which breaks down garbage and recreates it into something useful. Richie arrives for his chemistry lesson but asks to see Keenbean's new creations instead. Keenbean gladly agrees and introduces Cementia, the strongest adhesive in the world. As he exclaims, he accidentally pushes another scientist onto the wall full of Cementia, getting him stuck. Outside, Richard informs Regina that he needs to leave for an urgent matter. She gets upset, so Richard asks how she puts up with him. Regina teases that it's because of his money but adds that it's also for his cute posterior, much to Richard's delight. In the research facility, Keenbean shows Richie a splash that makes any texture impenetrable. Then, he allows him to move the Robo Honeybee, a little gadget with cutting-edge microcircuit innovation. When Richie makes the bee fly around Cadbury, Keenbean nervously notes that the bee is worth millions. Still, Richie has the bee land in front of his butler, who squashes it with a newspaper. Angered, Keenbean chases Richie for destroying his work. That night, the Rich Corporation's chief financial officer, Lawrence Van Doe, arrives. Ferguson greets him and whispers that he's checked the family's schedules. Van Doe hushes him, telling him not to talk about it yet. Van Doe joins the family for dinner, but Richie sits far from them since he doesn't like the man. Van Doe disapproves of Richard's charitable donations since the company isn't getting anything from it. But Regina says that they're helping the needy by providing facilities and resources. Still, Van Doe opposes the United Tool acquisition, and Richard agrees, much to Regina's surprise. However, he adds that he intends to donate the company to the workers after modernizing the factory. This delights Regina, but Van Doe is pissed. Suddenly, Keenbean enters and presents the Smellmaster 9000. Richard excitedly calls Richie over as he explains that the device converts any smell into a digital audio signal. Richie tries it out, letting the device identify the scents around. However, when it detects that Dollar's breath smells like their dinner, Richie hurriedly excuses himself to avoid his mother's glare. After supper, Van Mixture recommends working on the domain's security. Richard differs since all their valued belongings are in the family's vault. Hearing this, Van Gogh leaves with a smile. The next morning, Richie refuses to get up for his exercise, but when he sees that he has a gorgeous substitute trainer for the day, the boy gets motivated. Before heading to school, Richie uses his Dadlink device to locate his father and call him to report that he has a zit, disrupting Richard's meeting with the president. At school, Richie joins a class of heirs to prestigious companies where they learn about stocks. However, the boys don't take their teacher's questions seriously. Richie even passes a drawing to his friend via a fax machine. Later, they attend fencing class, where his friends, Reynolds and Ellsworth, still talk about business. Richie complains that all they talk about is money, so he invites them to hang out. However, they're too busy with other business matters. Suddenly, their classmate, Reginald, pokes Ellsworth, reminding him to watch his rear. A server arrives with Reginald's coffee, but he got the order wrong. Reginald starts insulting the server, so Richie pokes Reginald, spilling the coffee on his suit. On the way home, Cadbury lists down Richie's jam-packed schedule, stressing the boy out. Richie complains about how he and his friends are too busy, but Cadbury reminds him that he's preparing for a life of wealth and responsibilities. In any case, Richie chooses to change his timetable and orders the driver to go to the manufacturing plant. There, he finds the children actually playing baseball. At the point when he moves toward them, the children make sarcastic comments about him not showing up on a helicopter this time. Unfazed, Richie asks if he can play with them, but they refuse. The girl, Gloria, thinks that he can't even hit a beach ball. Richie refutes that he can play better than them, so she bets $10 to beat him. Richie agrees and takes out $10,000, but Gloria corrects that she only meant $10. Soon, the game starts, and Richie tumbles and misses the ball at first. The kids laugh at him, but he hits a home run on the next round, much to Cadbury's excitement. With this, Richie attempts to invite the kids to go to his place, but Gloria tells him to just take the money and leave because he doesn't belong there. This hurts Richie's feelings, so he goes on his way. The next day, while preparing the family's private plane, Ferguson sneaks a gift box amongst other presents. The family arrives, and Richard tries to get Richie excited about attending the Queen of England's birthday. Still, Regina notices that Richie is sad, so Cadbury reports that he failed to make friends. He suggests letting Richie stay so he can arrange a schedule of activities for him, and Regina agrees. Soon, she and Richard leave for England without their son. The next day, Cadbury invites the baseball kids to the estate, cheering Richie up. As their most memorable movement, Cadbury uncovers their own McDonald's, which dazzles everybody. After this, Richie joins the children for ball in his room. During this, he shows Gloria his dad link, and she shares that her father also lives away from them. When the boys ask for some real fun, Richie takes them to try the catapult. The kids are launched into the air and land in a giant airbag. After this, Richie suggests playing tag, but they do so while riding quad bikes around the estate. As the kids have fun, Cadbury talks to Gloria's mom, Diane. When he calls her madam, she tells him to call her by her first name instead. Suddenly, the kids drive around them, so Cadbury pulls Diane close to protect her. Romantic tension builds between them, but they shrug it off. Later on, Richie invites them to the private roller coaster that his father gave him for Christmas. Elsewhere, Van Doe deduces where the family's plane should be. Happily, he prepares to move into his bigger office. Meanwhile, Richie's parents pilot their plane, but Richard tells Regina to take over so he can secretly look for some chocolates. Using the Smellmaster, Richard checks the gift boxes for the chocolates, but the device detects TNT from the gift that Ferguson left. Richard rips the gift box, finds the bomb, and immediately throws it out. However, it explodes at the plane's tail, causing them to crash. Simultaneously, Van Mixture presents himself with a glass of champagne, commending his triumph. Back at the bequest, the children at last get ready to return home. Before they leave, one boy asks for their $100, revealing that Cadbury bribed them to play with Richie. Gloria shushes him, telling them that the money doesn't matter anymore. Still, Richie understood what it meant. As Cadbury is about to apologize, a maid breaks the news about Richie's parents, so the young boy immediately heads to the dadlink, which fails to locate his father. Meanwhile, Van Doe plots out how to loot the rich family vault, but Ferguson arrives to reveal that Richie wasn't on the plane. This angers Van Doe, but he stays optimistic since getting rid of the kid would be easy. That evening, the news reports about Richard's and Regina's deaths, but Richie is convinced that his parents are alive. In the middle of the ocean, Richard and Regina survive, adrift in their life raft. As Richard tries to fix his dadlink, Regina speculates that Van Doe planted the bomb. Realizing that she might be right, Richard worries about Richie. In the Rich Corporation, Van Doe's first act as CEO is to close the United Tools factory. Richie discovers this when Gloria calls him about it since her mother got fired from the factory. Along these lines, he heads to the Rich Partnership and tells Van Batter that he's taken a holiday from school to run the organization. Van Mixture contends that this is an errand for grown-ups, yet Cadbury adds that he's the kid's legitimate gatekeeper. Consequently, he concedes full position to allow Richie to run the organization. With this, Van Doe has no choice but to allow the United Tools to keep operating. Over the next few days, Richie takes full control of the company, preventing Van Doe from exploiting it. His exemplary performance lands Richie on the front page of famous magazines. One day, Gloria and her friends arrive to visit Richie, who happily welcomes them as his new research and development team. Soon, the kids develop a new formula for the Rich Bar to increase the sales, which the board approves. After many successful business decisions, Richie overpowers Van Doe's influence over the board. Fed up with the boy, Van Doe orders Ferguson to proceed with their next plan. Soon, the police barge into Richie's meeting, arresting Cadbury after an anonymous tip led them to find bomb equipment in his room. With him gone, one night, Ferguson suddenly steps into Richie's room, ordering men to install new cameras for his protection. He also forbids Richie from leaving the estate. Pissed, Richie walks out and finds more security staff installing cameras around his home. Later, Van Doe becomes agitated that Ferguson can't find the Rich family vault. As they discuss killing Cadbury, Keenbean listens in through a spy device. Immediately, Keenbean tells Richie about this. To help Cadbury escape, he shows Richie a chemical that can melt anything, including prison bars. Soon, Richie heads to the prison to deliver the chemical but disguises it as toothpaste. With it is a note that's written in Latin to get his message across. After receiving an item, Cadbury heads to the restroom, not noticing a large, gruff man entering. Before reading the note, Cadbury squeezes the new toothpaste into his toothbrush but finds the toothbrush melting. Finally, he reads the note, which gives him instructions to use the toothpaste on the bars. Suddenly, the man strangles Cadbury from behind, but he fights back. He dodges the man and eventually wins over him. After using the toothpaste to melt the bars on the bathroom window, Cadbury steps out in his attacker's outfit. Richie meets him in the alley and reveals that his parents' plane was found, but there were no bodies or life rafts. This strengthens his belief that his parents are alive. Later, Vando confronts Keenbean about Cadbury's escape. Confidently, Keenbean reveals that he knows everything, so Vando threatens to kill him unless he reveals something to him. Instead of returning to the estate, Richie and Cadbury head to Gloria's place. At the same time, Richard fixes his phone, allowing him to be located through the dad link. In Gloria's home, Richie hacks his method for getting to his PC. Notwithstanding, a watchman sees that the dad link is enacted from his room. At the laboratory, Vando interrogates Keenbean about the vault, but he claims that he doesn't know where it is and that the vault can only be opened by Regina's and Richard's voices. Ferguson receives a call alerting him that Richie is accessing the dad link. He rushes to Rich's room and sees that his parents have been found. As the computer pinpoints their location, Ferguson disconnects the line, cutting Richie's access. With the dad link confirming that Richard is alive, Ferguson tells Vando that they can still open the vault. Meanwhile, Richie and Regina get dressed for their long-awaited rescue and soon spot a plane heading their way. Unwilling to give up, Richie gathers his friends to infiltrate the estate that evening. The kids use the catapult to launch sacks of manure to knock out a guard. Then, they head to the lab and find Keenbean. As they free him from his seat, Richie tells him they need a diversion, so he and Gloria pour his concoction of soaps into the water system, filling the fountain outside with bubbles. While the guards check it out, the boys unplug the security cameras, allowing Richie and Cadbury to head to his room. Gloria and the boys go outside, where Diane waits while Keenbean heads back to the laboratory. At last, Richie effectively gets to his room, just to find that Van Batter has caught his folks. In the interim, Diane and the children are gotten by the gatekeepers. While the family reunites, Van Batter requests to know where the vault is. With a jeer, Richard uncovers that it's in Mount Richmore. As Vando takes Regina and Richard to the vault, Keenbean prepares a robo-bee in the laboratory, but the guards suddenly bring their captives inside. Seeing Ferguson forcing them into the cage, Keenbean gathers some cementia. When the guards climb down the stairs, they find themselves stuck as it's covered in cementia. Ferguson avoids the steps and turns on Keenbean's machine, pulling the cage into the molecule reorganizer. Keenbean puts cementia on a towel and wraps it around Ferguson's face. However, he also gets stuck in a puddle of cementia, so he uses robo-bee to sting Ferguson, forcing the man to bump his head on the stop button. The kids thank the scientists for freeing them, and Richie immediately heads to Mount Richmore, bringing some of Keenbean's inventions along. In Mount Richmore, Richard and Regina sing the code to open the vault. Finally, Vando enters, only to find random things inside. He asks them where the gold bars and money are, but Richard notes that these memorable items are what they value the most. Pissed, Vando orders the guard to shoot the couple. However, Richie arrives with a fencing sword and dares Vando to do the dirty work himself. With this, Vando shoots Richie. In any case, he stands unaffected, as his code is strengthened with Keenbean's unbeatable splash. The disarray permits Richard and Regina to wreck Van Mixture and the gatekeeper and break. They flee while Vando runs after them. However, they end up exiting out of the sculpted Richard's ear, so the family climbs the mountain's face. Ferguson sees them through a telescope and fires the proton particle maximizer, but Cadbury punches him, starting a fist fight. Vando corners the family, but Richie kicks the ladder, making him fall. To catch up with them, Vando takes the elevator instead. In the estate, Ferguson gains the upper hand and fires the machine again, but Cadbury throws balls at him, making him miss. Still, the impact causes Regina to slip, so her husband and son grab her just as Vando reaches them. He aims his gun while Richard and Richie toss Regina into an opening. At the same time, Ferguson knocks down Cadbury, then fires the machine again, destroying the sculpted Regina's nose. Regina then pulls Richie into the opening just as Cadbury knocks Ferguson out, finally able to take control of the machine. Through the telescope, Cadbury sees Vando with a gun, so he shoots, causing Vando to get tangled in the rope and drop down. Seeing him hanging, Richard and Richie decide to fire him, and Regina punches him in the face. Days after, Richie plays baseball with his friends, where he hits a home run. The ball lands in the field where Vando and Ferguson are cleaning up as part of their community service. Amid the excitement, Cadbury kisses Diane. As Richard and Regina watch their son surrounded by his team, they can now truly say that he's the richest boy in the world for having true friends. Thanks for watching video.